Welcome everyone to another Scottish Independence podcast, and we're going to put this one out as part of our series of podcasts called National Conversation, and in particular, this is a conversation that Fiona and I had with Greg Moodie. Now, if you were around the first referendum campaign, you'll remember all the cartoons that Greg came up with. They were just fantastic, and of course, he's carried on doing it since. So, our previous podcast, we were talking about things like, a citizens' convention to go out around Scotland and get Scots talking to each other about how we see our country and how we'd like it to be in the future. But there are all sorts of different kinds of conversations you can have with people, and this country, by which I kind of really mean Britain, has got a long history of political cartoons and being in the public arena and making a difference, and it goes right back to Hogarth in the 18th century. So when we got the chance to talk to Greg, we thought, yeah, let's take that up and try and find out how he sees what he does through the medium of cartoons and how that impacts what we're thinking about things and how we might want things to go forward. So does that more or less describe it, Fiona?
I think it does. I mean, there was that phrase, picture paints 1,000 words, which the art of the cartoonist really is getting that whole story in 6 or 8 panels. So it is a skill. But I think what's particularly special about this episode is we're broadcasting it in the week that's the 10th anniversary of the Independence Referendum. So it's important, I think, to mark that anniversary, because Greg was a huge part of it. And you talk to anybody about their experience of the Interref and his name will come up.
Greg was really happy to come and talk to us, and we really enjoyed talking to him.
We did. It was a lot of fun to that interview. I really enjoyed it. So hope you enjoy it as much as we did. Hello, welcome everybody. This is another episode in our series on the national conversation that Scotland, us Scots, we're having with each other and with ourselves. And this episode, we're going to be talking to Greg Moodie, who anyone who reads The National for sure will know that name, but there's lots of other things Greg's involved in. So this is a conversation that's much wider than political parties. Scotland's conversation can be taking place through art, culture, history, poetry, all sorts of things. And that's where we want to focus for this episode. So welcome, Greg. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Want to start with talking about the book that you've got coming out?
Okay, so, before the Indie Ref was announced in 2012, I was trying to write because to go back even further, when the banks crashed in 2008, and I was working as a freelance commercial designer, and suddenly, because the banks had been good customers for a long time, suddenly not only did the banks stop coming to me, everybody stopped coming. I couldn't find a single job as a freelancer for I was a good 6 months or so. And so in that time I thought, well, I'm going to start writing. And the banks are, of course, fantastic material for satire. Oh my God, there was so much of it. And so I just started writing. So it took me 3 years to write this first book, which I've finally just published. On the end of it, I started doing a second one because I was just, type happy at that point. And I liked the characters that I'd made up. So I kept on going. And so 3 years ago, I actually published the first book, 6 Degrees of Stupidity, and this new one was the one about the banks, and that's the unbearable stupidity of being. It's a stupid trilogy. Then I've started a third one. It's called Stupid Animals. It's got a long way to go. I think I've written one chapter.
So at that point, after the banks had crashed and you were, didn't have much of an income, it sounded like, and then you started writing. And at that point, were you also doing cartoons, or was that a later development?
So what happened was, conveniently, I'd finished these 2 books just when the Indie Ref had been called in 2012. And that to me was like, well, okay, I know what I'm doing next. And I started, I can't remember how I got involved. Somebody asked me to. It was the Artists for Independence. I think they'd just seen something that I'd done, a cartoon that I'd done. And they were everybody was crying out for artwork based on political artwork, because there was an awful lot of political writing going on at the time. And so the Artists for Independence, well, people were kind of saying, well, where's the art? Where's the visual art?
Yeah.
And so to me, that was a kind of a no-brainer. I've been doing cartoons since I can remember. My mum worked for DC Thompson's in Dundee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
good,
so
good place to be brought up if you want to know about comics, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, I grew up with, the Beano and the Dandy, and
Dandy.
The Bruins and Urwally were very important people in my life.
In all our lives.
In all our lives, isn't it? It's like my dad wouldn't get the Sunday Post, but my granny and granddad did, so I would just tear up to their house to get the bit with the Bruins and Urwally out of it.
Yeah. Still remember the centre part where, Mary Mac and all that. Yeah.
So is it actually out now, your book, then? Would you believe it's coming back from the printer on Monday? Great.
So I had a successful crowdfunder to cover the printing costs and the costs of some of the other perks that I'd offered. I've got a busy week ahead, kind of just stuffing envelopes, I think.
It's amazing how much, actually, when you think about the independence movement, you think we're half of the Scottish population, how much of it scrapes by on crowdfunding and a little bit of donation here and there. It's amazing, really, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not alone in this
not at all.
regard, but I certainly I've exhausted all other routes of funding pretty much, and I've always been successful with the crowdfunding, although it's extremely hard work. I mean, I can understand people are very careful about where they're putting their money these days, and an untested book, people are thinking, do I need that in my life? But really what I was also kind of saying was that I'm doing these cartoons now without backing, because since COVID, I was let go by the National, and therefore I'm doing this with just kind of whatever funding people are providing as we go. So I'm saying, I still do odd things for the National, and I'm going to do a piece for September the 18th. But I'm really kind of just trying to, keep it going. So I said, if you like the cartoons, you should probably support me doing this, because I'll keep on doing the cartoons for the price of the odd drink here and there. And, in the meantime, I can send you a nice book.
The cartoons are really, they're works of art in themselves, aren't they? The amount of...
Bless you.
No, it's genuinely, the amount of detail that's in. I'm just looking at the one over your shoulder there, but even the stuff that was in the newspaper in sort of 6 or 8 box format, the characters that you've got in there are fabulous. You spoke about characters in your books, but we probably all have got our favorites of the characters that we've got to know. I like the sleazy, warty journalists and Gordon Brown, the King Kong.
He's my favourite, the Gordon the dinosaur, and especially when there's the main thing happening in a particular frame, so I kind of take that in, but then often there's Gordy the dinosaur stomping around in the background saying something like, nobody listens to me, or just
federalism.
That's right, yeah.
Gordon is the gift that keeps giving.
I saw one that you did. It must have been pretty recently. It's your hand, and you're drawing Keir Starmer and having a conversation with him about the script. Well, I'm not going to do too much. So I sort of took that on board, and the one particular one was about the 2-child benefit cap. So there's there's that, and there's him. But behind him, there's just a kid's teddy bear, which immediately adds, bathos to the whole thing. And behind Starmer, there's the House of Commons. On Big Ben Tower, you've got a little elastoplast, so it's like a sticking plaster, and it's those wee details. Once you kind of, your eye gets so tuned into it, they're just brilliant, actually.
See,
really.
I like to throw in a lot of details that you might not catch the first time. But yeah, I've got the Houses of Parliament are cracked all over. There's all kinds of cracks, and I've put sticking plasters, and that to me is, the building itself has seen better days, but it's also kind of a metaphor for Westminster governance to me.
Yeah, and the union itself, really.
Absolutely.
How long does it take you to do something like that then? Because it looks as if the ones with a sort of collage outline, I don't know if that's a real collage or if it's a drawn-in collage, but they look painstaking to construct.
Well, see, when I started doing these originally, I've been doing cartoons a long time, and they were cut and paste, with scissors and my trusty Pritt stick. And then when it came to doing them for the National, I was doing them as digital images. But then after a while, I got bored of that, and I thought, right, I actually want to go back to doing cut and paste stuff. And so this is the one I did last week. And as you can see, these are all different layers that would actually just peel off. So I like to kind of have fun with it. I'm making points as I go, but really I'm kind of having fun at their expense as well.
Well, that's the beauty of it, though, isn't it? And there's always a serious point, but the enjoyment is perhaps the first thing that hits you, and then the rest of it's underneath. I mean, I love the idea that you've got this new character, really, Starmer's AI Starmer. And before that, the sort of robotic Sarwar is another one of my favorites, with a square head and the wee things on.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got a whole new front bench to contend with. I mean, we just came across Rachel Reeves for the first time when we did a live stream last week. We were talking about it. And she's extraordinary. She's rude. She's got these magnificent dramatic eye rolls. I mean, what a character waiting to be satirized.
And you're right. I mean, waiting to be satirized. I'm kind of just biding my time for that one. I always feel like the story that I go with is a story that is kind of, you can't ignore it. It's too big a story to ignore. It might not be an important story. Like this week, Keir Starmer has taken the portrait of Thatcher down. Now, that to me, it's a complete throwaway of a story, but it's cartoon gold. I can have a lot of fun with that. So before we began here, I wrote up a little script. And so to get back to your question, how long does it take? I mean, so I wrote up this script. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do about the Thatcher portrait and why he's removing it and whatnot. So I wrote that up. It probably took me about an hour to just write the whole thing up, and then I'll wait until tomorrow, and that's when I'll start doing the assembly of the images.
Do you find your subconscious is working away in that interval then between?
Oh yeah, very, very much so. And also you're kind of looking out for other stories as well, just in case something kind of pips the one that you've gone with. I mean, because there's nothing worse than presenting a cartoon when you realize that it's actually out of date.
Yeah.
Out of date very quickly.
Yeah. A bit like doing a podcast episode, because we might be working a couple of weeks in advance and you get there as a different government or something like that.
Well, that's right.
So do you think cartoons, do you think they help to engage people in political, action?
Oh my God!
I mean, obviously they're funny. They're funny, and we can have, and they're so Scottish as well. That's great. There's some other cartoonists based out in England that I really appreciate as well, but they're Scottish. So I was wondering, is it like those of us who are pretty convinced anyway about independence and we like them and we'll share them around. Do you think it impacts on folk who are maybe not so, not so convinced yet?
I mean, I would hope so. I think what I do is actually quite gentle. It's not. I mean, it can be cutting, but I think that I do it in such a way that you'll always get a laugh, and so there's people like Murdo Fraser who have followed me on Twitter, and I mean, I have a lot of fun with his character, so it's not offensive or anything like that. And whether it actually cuts through to winning anybody over, I don't know. I mean, they used to say about Spitting Image that Spitting Image did all this massive amount of anti-Thatcher stuff, and come the election, the Tories got back in, so it didn't really have any effect.
And humour is such a universal language as well. They might not agree with your politics, but if they find it funny what you've done, then that message is getting exposed or getting out there.
That's right. So this is the book that I did in 2014. I asked a whole load of people to give me quotes for the inside page, and there are some quite surprising ones. I think you'll find. Lord Fuchs said, better to make your point with a smile rather than a scowl.
Well,
yeah.
Jim Murphy, MP at the time, at least it's funny and takes 10 years off me. Nicola Sturgeon, Deputy First Minister. Funny, irreverent, and designed to ensure that none of us get to take ourselves too seriously.
Yes, good.
So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, I think the humour helps cut through.
I suppose it's a fine line as to what's gentle and what goes a bit further. I'm thinking about the one that I saw that you'd done. It was GB News, and Hitler appears to be one of the presenters.
His own show, yeah.
Yeah, which, is entirely possible. Is there a point in your head where you go enough and no further, or do you just...
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I think people should kind of self-censor as much as they can. And there's things that I've done where I've later gone, oh, jeez, I probably shouldn't have done that. And when I was working at the paper, they were very, very quick to tell me when I was.
I suppose an editor looking over your shoulder is perhaps a good.
So, like, if you publish something on your website, which is what I do now, and somebody hits you with a legal challenge, then you just take it off the website. That's not really any big deal. But if you've put it in a newspaper, that's quite different. So they're right to be cautious.
Have you got any favourite cartoonists yourself?
Yes, I have to come back to the Beano and the Dandy, actually. And the man who did the Bruins and Ur Wally was apparently an Englishman called Dudley D. Watkins. And I was a big fan of his work. I remember at the time there were you could find American comics, but the American comics tended to be like what do you call them? Superheroes, And this American culture is still the movie culture is still very full of these superheroes. Well, I love the fact that the Bruins lived in Glebe Street, and it's just down the road. So to me, that was just like they're just like us.
Exactly, and that's a good point, isn't it? Because in my family, one of the favourites was getting a Giles cartoon book for your Christmas, so you get the whole year's worth. And that's the same thing. It's like the Giles family are they just live in what looks like it could be a council house somewhere, There's a kind of raggedy old rundown car, and they've pulled up out in the garden, and then this very weird granny in the background who's always got a wee bottle of something alcoholic, in her pocket. But
you had at the end of the year, there was a book that had the year's cartoons, and I mean, I just loved that.
Yeah.
Well, do you do that? You could do that.
Well, I have done. I mean, so that book from 2014 was basically all the cartoons that I did from 2012, and I mean, I look back at some of this stuff, and it's kind of weird, to be honest. Some of it kind of makes me laugh still. I always loved Blair McDougall and his tuba.
Well, he's back, isn't he, Blair McDougall?
I mean, I'm really looking forward to this because he was a great character at the time, and I never ever heard the guy speak or anything, but now he's an MP, so like I cannot wait for him to just put his head above the parapet.
We'll look out for that. Actually.
Yeah. I mean, when Fiona and I, were talking about asking you on, and partly because I'd picked up on your crowdfunder and then thought, maybe we could get Greg on to talk to us. At one point we were kind of saying, we do a lot of podcasts, and I mean, sometimes they're with politicians, but they're always got quite a political kind of, angle in, and or it'll be something to do with some policy or other. And I was kind of making a bit of a difference between doing that kind of interview and sitting here chatting to yourself. But then afterwards I thought, but hang on, because I mean, obviously, cartoonists and yourself, you've got, the skills to make the cartoon, to make that work as, visual image. But you also must have quite a distinct political kind of, I don't know what you say, antennae really, because you, like you were saying, to pick up a story that you might use. But also like the ones about Starmer being using AI scripts to respond, and then the way you took that. I mean that requires quite a lot of political kind of nous, doesn't it? So
I think so, and I mean it's not something that I just had to begin with. I mean you kind of pick that up by doing it, and it becomes kind of second nature after a while. Becomes quite sort of natural, and you know what stories will work in cartoon form. Because there's some stories are really great, but you just think, I'm not sure how I would tackle such a thing. I think just doing it is the way to kind of learn it, really. That's just like everything else, really.
Same with us, you just jump in, you've no idea what.
Our background isn't anything to do with doing podcasts or recording or anything, but in fact we were kind of surprised to sort of think, I thought we'd retired, and then you get involved and things kind of gather momentum. And
that's always been a great thing about the indie movement, that I thought everybody just turned their hands to various things that they'd never tried before. I mean, I had done cartoons, but to do them actually like not full time, but to do a regular thing every week, I would never have thought of doing that.
When you think some of the other art that comes out of the indie movement, like the Yes Slates and the Yes Stones and photographs, just people, as you say, what can you do? Do it. That was kind of how we get on.
That's a great thing, and it's very inspiring as well when you see people doing that stuff. They're not, they've got nothing to gain from doing it other than just kind of spreading the yes word.
That's right. What do you think about with the sort of state of the movement at the moment? Then, where do you think we should be going?
I think that the movement itself is really healthy. I mean, I was thinking about, obviously, with the anniversary of 2014 coming up, a lot of people are giving this some thought. And I remember after the horrible disappointment that I just kind of thought, well, I give it 5 years. I honestly could not see the independence question not coming back again and winning. And I at that point I thought 5 years, and the momentum we had during that 5 years was incredible. And I mean, so I think that certain quarters should have harnessed that better than they did, because I didn't think that we'd be here 10 years later and that we're still not independent. Having said that, though, I still think that the movement itself is really strong. I don't think there's anybody who's been a yes voter who's gone no.
No, it's hard to once you see the light. When you think about the 10 years, though, I mean, I can't believe it's 10 years in one way, because it seems crystal clear that night and the next morning, you know. But when you think about in that intervening time, the effort that has gone in to crushing the yes side from the massed ranks of the United Kingdom, including them from muscular unionism to, you know, I'm sure they infiltrate all sorts of bits of Scotland that we've yet to find out about. And you know, the entire media, practically apart from the national, the entire everything that goes out on the BBC. It's just been a 10-year long campaign to try and crush us. And here we are. We've still got half of the country is up for it, and the other half we've yet to ask. Actually, some of them didn't get a chance in 2014.
That's right. So I mean, I think you just answered your own question. I mean, I would say this is a pretty healthy movement if that's actually what happened. I mean, we saw exactly what the British state is capable of when it comes to trying to snuff out this thing. My God, they are shameless. So we know what to expect. I mean, I just remember some of the scare stories, the Doctor Who. You won't be able to get Doctor Who in an independent Scotland. I mean, so I made a cartoon about that, actually.
Oh, let's see it.
So, I mean, yeah, it was vote no or the Time Lord gets it.
Oh,
yeah, despite the fact that they easily watch Doctor Who over in Ireland without any bother whatsoever.
Yeah, or Europe. Yes, that Doctor Who with the scarf. Vote no, or the Time Lord gets it. Brilliant.
So,
we'll get that one. We'll get that one up. Oh yeah, there it is.
That's excellent.
I mean, because it was such a ridiculous claim to have made.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yet last week, what did we see from the BBC's? I don't know who does their Twitter thing. You don't know if they're joking half the time, but they had a picture of a corpse lying on a slab with a tag on their toes saying, oh, shortage of corpses because record number of medical students have signed up. And you think only the BBC Scotland could make that a terrible thing. Scotland bad, not enough corpses. It's just shameless.
Yeah.
Shameless.
So, I mean, BBC Scotland deserve a particular special place in hell, really. I've always tried to, I mean, they have become the story so many times that I had to find a way of depicting them without depicting any particular individuals, because it's a very faceless operation. And that's when I came up with the potato head little figures running around. And they're useful as journalists, as useful as other anonymous types that you can't, there's no point in naming them because you're never gonna, nobody knows who they are anyway. But that's been a very useful device.
What would you have us as if you did one with us in it?
Dangerous question, that one.
I've done some cartoons where there's like an indie march going on in the background.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that has been the big story, especially like I think in the run up to 2014, there was, there were big rallies and things like that. So
I can think of one. I don't think it was you that did it, though, but I can think of one that involves Kevin Gibney, who set up Independence Live. So someone did a cartoon of him sort of. It was Nick Robinson talking to two people, and with nothing in the background. And this cartoon of Kevin comes along and sort of says, "Excuse me, could you move? We've got a march coming through." Something like that. Actually, and it was a very good way of putting it, because that's exactly what the BBC were doing. I mean, the last Saturday before the referendum, I was I live in the West End of Glasgow. I was walking into the town, so I was walking down Sauchiehall Street towards Buchanan Street, and one of the well-known BBC news reporters, can't remember her name now. She still watches them. She was talking to two guys just at the top of Sauchiehall Street, and there was a cameraman, and they were obviously talking about the referendum. They both had no banners or flags in their hand, and about 200 metres down the road, top end of Buchanan Street in front of the concert hall was jam-packed full of people there just waving banners, and there were stalls all over the place, and there were conversations happening between yes voters and no supporters. Quite, decent kind of, discussions going on about 200 metres away from her. And I looked at her and I thought, none of that's ever going to get onto the BBC.
Yeah.
It just won't get on.
Absolutely right. And this still happens. You just see that kind of, I know it's very hard not to despair with that stuff.
It is sometimes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I don't see it anymore. I don't have a TV license, so.
No, me neither.
Life's nicer.
Immediately after the referendum.
They're shameless.
Yeah.
I know. I was having a look on your website, Greg, and I noticed there's obviously the cartoons, but there's also paintings that you've done of, well, the ones that caught my eye were Jackie Kay and Kathleen Jamie, both being poets and former Machers and things. But I know you've done some. You've got one of a version of Robbie Burns and also one of Sir Walter Scott, and I'm sure there's others that I just didn't pick up on. But I thought they were great. Actually, I thought they were really attractive. Really attractive images. But what brought you to do those?
Okay, well, it started off with the Robert Burns image. I mean, that one behind me, that's one of many. I've done a whole load of them. But the reason that started in the first place was in 2016, my local bar, the Torfican Inn, approached me and said, would you like to do a series of murals in the bar based on Tam O'Shanter? They already said that's what they wanted. And I was, yeah, of course. And all that happened was I'd done 6 out of 7 panels, and for the 7th one, I didn't know what to do. And the landlord said, well, why not a portrait of Burns? And so that's how that came about. I came up with the image that I see everywhere is my portrait of Burns, the sort of graphic-y one.
Yeah.
And on the back of that, somebody said, it's cool. They kept using the word, it's cool, So I thought, well, that sounds good to me. So I did a whole book of cool Scots, and there was like 42 different ones in it. And from there, what happened was the Scottish Poetry Library saw one of the pictures of Nan Shepherd, I think it was.
Yeah.
And said, would you like to have an exhibition? Actually, what they said was, first of all, they said, we'd like to use your Nan Shepherd image for an event that we're going to have. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, or go ahead, And the next day they wrote back and said, oh, by the way, we've got exhibition space. Would you like to have an exhibition? I was about to bit their hand off. So that's how it came to. I came to doing Jackie Kay and Kathleen Jamie and those people.
Did you do anything at the festival? I mean, I was at an event that the Luath Press had done, and that it struck me they'd hired, I think it was 3 venues, and they had a whole, maybe a dozen, 15 of their authors were doing sort of talks, and you could buy the books. And I thought, what a great idea. And next festival, 2025, the year before the Holyrood election, that might be a good time to get some kind of event event.
For sure. And I was one of the speakers at a couple of the Luath events. I was at this most recent one that they did over the festival. It depends on if you've got a book current, and the Cool Scots book the Luath published, and so I was one of their authors for a while. They do their thing. Everybody has, I think, 3 or 4 minutes, and they actually time you. And if you go over the 4 minutes, they've got a horn that they'll blow. So no pressure or anything. That's about all that I've done with the festival. And I mean, I would like to do more. And certainly when we had the poetic license exhibition at the Poetry Library, I got my band to come and play, and we all dressed up in kilts and ridiculous, overblown Scottish outfits. You know, they're not.
So
remotely.
you've got a band. I didn't know you got a band.
Well, what's your band called?
It has a different name every time we perform. It's more dada than a band, really, to be honest. It's more of an art experiment.
Right.
So we never have the same outfit or the same name twice. We've done it in drag as the St. Andrew's Sisters, and that was on St. Andrew's Day. The photographs are legendary, by the way. Don't look for them. It's a lot of fun. It's just my pals from the village of Tarfekin.
It's fabulous just listening to you. I thought, what a lot of fun you must have. There's a serious side in that you've got to earn a living from it as well. So what about where we can get the book? Can people buy prints from your cartoons? Where's the best place to support you?
Absolutely. GregMoodie.com. All of my material is on there. Yeah, prints. The new book is not available just yet, but it will be. It's going to arrive on Monday, basically. So it's already in the online shop. So yeah, GregMoodie.com.
Great. We'll put the link in the notes to this podcast as well.
Really enjoyed talking to you, actually.
Yeah,
really
fun half hour.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Most enjoyable.
That was our interview with Greg, and he did mention it, but just in case you missed it, his book, it's called The Unbearable Stupidity of Being. It's the second of a trilogy, and you can get it from his website. We'll put the link in the notes as well.
We hope you've enjoyed this one as much as we did talking to Greg, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Bye now.
Bye.